station of decapitation without your head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal.
I'm Treacherous Trista.
And he might be wondering why he's here after the name of the show gave him a chuckle. But we have actor, musician, Children of the Corn, the Burbs, all kinds of cool stuff, and new movie Queen Bee's Courtney Gains. Very good to have you back.
Yeah, Children of the Corn. That's why I'm here, partner. I know.
We'll talk about anything.
We can talk about all the stuff you want, anything from the past or whatever. It's all good. We'll get to the current stuff too. I'm not worried.
All right, sounds good. Well, first of all, this is 30 years in show business for you. So, from all those times, VHS to DVDs, the fall of video stores, the rise of streaming, like all those changes, how does that affect you as an actor?
Yeah, I think I started even pre-Blockbuster. I think when I started, it was 35 millimeter, and you knew your movie was going to get into a theater somehow. So I liked that. I liked going to the movies and seeing myself 40 feet tall. It's very strange, but I like seeing myself in the theater. So gosh, that's a long span you just threw out. So how has it changed? I think overall, actors have more work, which is good, right? I think the flip side of that, though, is it's that much harder to get noticed. You have so much content out there. Who's going to jump out and get noticed? I think changing from 35 to digital, I see it on two sides. I see that on one hand, it's positive because filmmakers, it doesn't cost as much to make movies anymore. So a lot of people can make movies. Cameras are much easier to operate. But on the other side, there's less of a reverence for the moment of when you're shooting. And that's because back in the day, film was expensive. So people were very focused when you were shooting, and when something wasn't going right, you cut right away. There's a lot of pressure about that, not to burn film. Now something goes wrong, and then everybody starts talking, and the sound guys are, "Are we still rolling?" Because it's like it doesn't mean anything to shoot video. I liked the older days in that regard. Plus, I just like the way 35 millimeter has more depth. But I'm glad that I got to be there when they were still shooting 35, and I'm glad I got to be part of the whole 80s teen cinema run that I got. Yeah,
and how about the rise of streaming? How does that change for the actors?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at it from mainly a financial point of view, and what I don't like about that is the residuals are very much in question and how to measure that. And the reason I say that is not just for me financially, but for the next generation coming up. If in fact residuals go away in a big way, there's a lot of actors who are not going to be able to survive. I would not have been able to have the career I've had if I didn't have residual income in the slow times. Many, many times a check from Sweet Home Alabama or Back to the Future, which play on the TV constantly, have come and saved my ass, and paid my bills and kept me able to do what I want to do. And I think if you eliminated that, you would probably cut an actor's income in half, in my opinion. And that'd be doomsday for most of us.
Mm-hmm. I like to ask that question. I do get a similar answer depending on how long someone's been in the business.
Of course.
More veteran actors have a different.
Yeah, but I like I said, I'm more worried. I obviously have a body of work that does get residuals, and I'm okay. But I really worry for the next generation. I think, again, seeing it from the point of view of a supporting actor, essentially, that's what we do. We support the leads, as it were, and if they can't make a living, you're going to have less and less good supporting actors out there, in my opinion.
When we started, you said, I'm here for Children of the Corn because it is a horror show.
Well, you said the thing about the head, yeah. So
right. Well, that does. I want to ask you a question about that whole idea. Like, has your view changed of Children of the Corn over the years? Like, was there ever a time like you didn't want to talk about it, and did it become like, hey, this, I'm glad that I was part of this?
Yeah, it has changed over time. None of us could have possibly known it was going to go on to be this cult classic, and that John Franklin and I were going to go on to be ranked in top 10 creepiest kids of all time. Malachi was going to go on to be ranked in the top 50 scariest characters of all time. Those are lofty numbers in the genre, and the genre itself was just considered B film. Like, the critics hated it, they hated us. But history has shown that, in fact, horror has gone mainstream and conventions and all these things, and that just added to the rise of the popularity of the franchise. So there was definitely a time where I wanted to do something that I would be more recognized for than that. But over time and doing conventions and things, I'm thankful I'm recognized for anything. and I've learned from the fans that it's not like, I took the whole thing a little more seriously than I needed to. What I've learned from fans is that horror fans not only love horror, but they enjoy horror in a titillating, fun type of way. It's not everybody thinks like that. I don't honestly think like that. Violence doesn't do that much for me. Like my manager, Chris Rowe Management, he has a lot of convention people, but he also now has a good roster. I've been with him over 15 years. I go see a movie with him. Like, I remember we went to the Hatchet 2 premiere, and every time there was a kill, he laughed like a little schoolgirl. I'd never heard that laugh out of him before and since. Every time there was a kill, he'd be like, it's just like, do I know you? So for horror fans, the stimuli, they process it differently. And so it's been good for me to go through that process and learn to just not take myself so seriously.
Well, when you mentioned that the critics didn't like it at the time, so at the time though, when it comes out, it's getting panned, and then I believe Stephen King was notorious not liking the film version.
Correct.
How does that make you feel? It's your first feature film. You're a young man, and
it was tough. It was tough to. There was a local critic, ABC in Los Angeles, that panned the film and panned me badly. He said I read my lines like I was reading a laundry list, and in some ways he wasn't off, but it was pretty cruel. He'd never seen anything else I'd ever done, which I hadn't done a lot. But hey, why don't you wait to see this guy? And the reason he was right was because I was they really emphasized me over pronunciating my words on that project. They were afraid I was mumbling things, so I did have to talk more like that. And I would never. After I saw it, I was like, I'm never listening to anybody what they tell me how to do my stuff ever again. I'm not going to listen to that. But I think it must have worked for the character, because the character is 35 years we're still talking about it. But that was a hard blow to me as my first film. But I always say now, he isn't working anymore. I still am. And many, many people have come up to me and said they've had nightmares. I figure if I can get into people's subconsciouses, I must have done a good job.
Yeah, it is. I agree. And when you said, do you think it has grown in popularity over time? Because I remember when I watched it at the time, I really liked it. And it wasn't a lot of other horror fans didn't like it. And same thing with some other movies, like Halloween 3 was never a favorite. Now it seems like everyone loves it.
Yeah, I don't remember what the horror fans thought about it. I just remember, the sort of straight critics panning it, and I was just on to the next, and I had, like I said, I worked, pretty much nonstop for about 5-6 years in the 80s. The whole idea being that, I studied in a professional acting class for 5 years, but everybody kept telling me when I turned 18, that's when it was going to happen, because back then you had to be 18 to work a full day. So I didn't know if that was going to be true. I was hoping it, because I've seen some other actors in the class working, but that is exactly what happened. I literally, turned 18 before the movie, and then just didn't stop working for like 6 years. So I was just on to the next, and then on to the next. So I didn't worry too much about what horror fans were thinking.
Yeah.
But
it would probably be hard to know back then, because there was
just considered B movies. Horror was not a prestigious thing, or like it is now. Now it's completely mainstream. Some of the biggest shows on television are horror-driven material. So it's really come a long way in those 30 years.
About being 18, how was that hard to do the movie? You're 18, when you're making it, but it had a lot of child actors. So did that make it difficult?
We really only had the two kids, Robbie and I can't think of the actress's name. And but yeah, there's only 2 kids on it. The rest, some of the extras were in high school. A lot of them were in high school actually, but they didn't have to be there all the time. So they were almost all of them were like 17, 18 themselves. So it was just really being first filmed. John Franklin was actually older than I was, looking 12. But for both of us, it was our first big break. We knew that much, and we both took it seriously. I needed to prove to myself, and I felt like I needed to prove to Hollywood or the world that I belonged. You know, that's what was at stake with me. I was not messing around. I came in there to guns a-blazing, you know?
I normally, when I watch a horror movie, I'm drawn to the villains, but I have to admit, John Franklin in Children of the Corn is a villain I can't stand, in a good way. He really does not. I cannot support him. He's very annoying. But he's perfect in it.
There definitely seems to be a divided camp of, you know, those who love Malachi and those who love Isaac. I think it's split pretty evenly, but for some reason, people do seem to like one or the other. I don't know why.
Right. I assume he wasn't anything like that, out of character.
No, John's a nice guy. He, about 17 years ago, maybe a little longer, he sort of gave acting a rest. And he taught high school for 17 years and predominantly English, but also like Shakespeare. So he's a well-trained actor. He did a lot of theater in Chicago before he came out to LA.
Really nice guy. Trista, you have a question?
You also recently released an album. Congratulations. Can you tell people what to expect from it and where they could get it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have two things sort of going right now. I have a solo record called Acoustic Gains Volume 1, and it's very acoustic driven. Mellow. We've released our 3 singles so far. The third single was this last week, was called Let It Ride, and that's a very vintage bluesy sounding song. And some good news with that, a movie I did during the pandemic called My Redneck Neighbors, the zany comedy. I say, who do you think played the Rednecks? Picked the song up. So that's very cool. So I already got someone to put it out in a movie. So very excited about that. And like I said, that's very mellow, kind of harkens back to like the 70s when I was growing up, where acoustic was a very much part of the music scene, which nowadays is just not. So kind of bringing that back. But I also have a band called Ripple Street, and we've put out 3 singles this year as well. Our third single came out about 3 weeks ago called Would You? And in the EPKs, you kind of have to say, what does it sound like? I don't like to particularly do that, but if I had to say, what does it sound like? To say it's Black Sabbath-esque, I don't think it's a far reach at all. It's very edgy and pretty hard rock. Not metal, but hard rock. So it's nice to have these two different things going on. The acoustic record kind of came out of COVID, having time on my hands a little bit and thinking about my own mortality. I've been talking about doing the record for a long time. So I did the research, realized you could put a little home studio together nowadays, thanks to technology, incredibly cheap compared to the old days. You don't have to go to a studio to track anymore if you don't want to. And then you can send those off in WAV files for people to mix and master, and voila, you're in business.
When you just said there about thinking about your own mortality, it's kind of the vibe I got when on the track. There was a time, and you got lines in there like youth on your side, and so as we get older, how does that affect you as an actor? Because obviously you gain life experiences, so that will help you. But I think you'd also lose some of your angst and some of your sense of invulnerability. So what are the pluses and minuses?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the song first. So actually, I wrote There Was a Time, 25 years ago, actually. And really, it was nostalgic, but it was because I'd just become a father, which sort of really changed everything for me in my life. To me, there's certainly milestones in my acting career, but in my personal life, really, there was life before I was a father and life after I was a father. To me, I can't explain it. It changed everything. It's sort of like something that had been missing that I didn't even know was missing. But once I had a child, basically everything, my getting work, it was all about taking care of my kid, keeping a roof over my head, putting food on the table, So that was where that I was looking back at my youth from there, But the response to that song has been really nice, and I've been really pleased with. That was the first one we released, and the feedback's been really good, and so I've been very pleased with that. So to answer the second part of your question, which is how has it affected me as an actor? Yeah, I think that number one, I think people have asked like how have you lasted so long? I think part of that has been able to be realistic with myself in terms of being able to look myself in the mirror, see what I look like now, not what I looked like when, and going, okay, what is the market for what I have now? And a really good example is after the teen cinema run. And then after I had my son, I was like, I got to get back to work. I was like, okay, so you're 20 something. There's no 20 something roles. No one believes you're a teenager anymore. The casting directors, they've been seeing you over a decade. There's work at 30. What are you going to do? And I was like, I think I can play adult mad dogs. So I grew the hair long again, combed it back to recede, put a goatee on, sideburns, aged myself up as much as possible. And I said, I'm going to play mad dogs, guest stars on television. And really for a decade, that's what I did. And that was my bread and butter. And then I had to go through another phase. And then now I'm in another phase. And now I'm in my 50-year-old phase, right? And so what roles are going to be available to a 50-year-old? People who are established. They're not going to have 50-year-olds in a movie that are not. They're going to be the sheriffs. They're going to be the psychiatrists. They're going to be, they're going to be established, store owners, things like that. And so you start to get your head around that those are the kind of roles. What are those kind of roles can you get, and what kind of roles will you be able to accomplish? And that's exactly what talk about some of the things that are coming out lately. That's exactly the kind of roles I've been getting lately. So. Yeah. But yes, I've mellowed out. It's hard to be as edgy as I was. I was certainly the angst of teenagehood, the anger. That's what my father said after he saw Children of the Corn. I thought it was an acting compliment. He was like, I had no idea you were so angry. I realized years later, he meant me.
Right. Well, it's just something actually I think about personally, because when I started the show, I was in my 20s, and so I just turned 45. And some of the longtime listeners, they miss the more angry person. But
I found when I was younger, it was really easy to just have one point of view on things. And as you start to get into your mid-30s, for some reason, your brain starts to change, and you see it from 4 or 5 points of view. At least that's what's happened to me. And it actually makes it much harder to make decisions, because but it's better ultimately, because you tend to see a wider scope of things, which then leads to more tolerance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I see all the guitars behind you. And you mentioned that I didn't actually know you did the band. So it's really interesting to me that there's a real contrast in styles, the acoustic stuff, and then the
very much stuff. So. I can't wait for you to hear the other stuff now that you've already listened to There Was a Time. When you hear Would You, you're going to be like, whoa, those are two different worlds, which is fun.
No, that's very cool. So when did that become something you wanted to pursue, doing the music?
It was always there. I actually started taking guitar lessons at 13, which was the same time I started taking acting lessons. But I was very clear I wanted to be a professional actor. That was the goal. I wasn't thinking of so much a professional career in music. I just really wanted to learn to play guitar. And then what's kept me at it is writing songs. That is, once I could learn to play 3 chords and a couple scales, songs started coming out. And I think that's just the way I work. Is I'm not as interested in learning somebody else's thing, right? Like I can totally appreciate Marlon Brando or James Dean, but I'm smart enough to know I'm not ever going to be them. I got to be me. And I really approach music the same way. Like, I love Led Zeppelin, I love Rush, but I'm never going to be as good as those guys, musician-wise, I don't believe. But what I can seem to do is write a song. I can seem to connect, just like I connect to emotions in acting. And I feel like that's what separates me or the men from the boys with a lot of the work I've gotten. I feel like I can connect to things musically from an emotional point of view. And I can connect those chords and things to something that I'm feeling emotionally, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And I just really love writing, and that's what's kept me going. And I'm at the point now where, that I've had a few little record deals, but it never really took me where I wanted to go. And now you don't really need those gatekeepers. You may not get the kind of exposure you'd want, but you don't need the gatekeepers. They can't stop you. There's Spotify, whatever. And so I'm just at that point where it's like time to put this acoustic record out. I've been sitting on some of this material for 20 years, and it's just time to let it out there, let it be heard.
I really liked it, not just because you're here. Not just because you're here. I really liked it, and I could tell that it was personal. Yes, a
lot of the acoustic stuff particularly is very personal, and I had bands in LA. My first band was a band called The Gathering in like the late 80s, early 90s, and we were like real established in the coffee house scene in LA and such, while the metal scene was still going on. So I've written a lot on acoustic and co-wrote a lot as well with female vocalists and things, and I love what the acoustic thing gives you. But yeah, that's the stuff that's from there is far more personal than some of the rock stuff is too, but it's a little different. You may not, kind of like an actor, like you don't exactly know where it's coming from. I might be emoting something, but you might not know if it's personal or not. But when the acoustic stuff, it's pretty hard to hide. It's pretty intimate,
When you compared it to acting, is it a similar creative outlet for you than, doing music?
It's more personal in that, like I was just saying, usually if I'm an actor, I'm usually doing somebody else's words, right? So I'm trying to bring their character to life. I may be using things personal, but you won't know what they are. Like an example, I'm supposed to be crying in a scene. Maybe I can't get there in the reality of the scene. So then I go think about my dog, get myself nice and sad, and then drop into the scene. You don't know what I used. You don't, I mean, I have to dig out the skeletons many times for roles, but you won't know, you don't know what the skeletons are. And there's something a little safe about that. In the music, I used music a lot to get me through tough times in my life. Things I could not quite articulate, losses, relationships, whatever. I could seem to get them down in a song, and then it would allow me to grieve that in a way. The first Ripple Street record we put out a few years back, that whole record's a breakup record. I went through a really bad breakup, and for a couple of years we worked this material up, and so it gave me a venue to get it out, and then we finally put it down in a CD. But it was a great bit of therapy for me. I don't know if anybody else likes what went on, but for me, it was cathartic.
Yeah. Trista, you have another question?
Yeah. Do you have any advice for someone who might aspire to a similar career as yourself?
Yes, I definitely do. Number one, I always tell people that doors may open easy the first time, but if you're not prepared, they won't open easy the second time. So meaning when opportunity knocks, you best be ready. And how you do that is by getting yourself in a class, a good class or several good classes, and take your craft seriously and get good at it. And in some ways, I was fortunate that it took me 5 years to break. There were several actors in my class within a year or 2 years that broke. And what they made, the mistake, in my opinion, was they stopped working at their craft. They thought they had arrived. I never stopped working at it. I stayed with my mentor for 10 years. Then I taught for a number of years. Then I basically have either taught or trained my whole career, and to continue to try to work at it and keep my chops up. And I think that that's important. The other thing I like to tell people that I think is sort of an attainable goal is, casting directors, are the gatekeepers to the producers and the directors who give you jobs. If you can get 2 or 3, literally 3 casting directors to believe in you, you can work. And those are the people that are going to help you get your break. And we talked Shoulder to the Core, and that was my first break. Linda Francis, the casting director, is who I give all the credit for. She'd seen me in a showcase right when showcases were starting in the early 80s, and she became a fan, and she got me in another film that ended up falling apart. But she already had showed, like, she liked my work, and she was the one who brought me in, and she was the one who kept saying, this is your guy, this is your guy. So if you literally can have 2 or 3 of those that believe in you, you will get opportunities.
What originally brought you to acting? What was...
I got the bug at 10 years old. I was in this after school program, and all the tough kids are in this program. And we had this really tough lady named Miss Gardner, who I kept in touch with. She saw me in theater even like 5 years ago. She's been a powerful influence in my life. She got all these tough kids to do plays. She even got the toughest kid in school. We did a farce in drag, if you can believe that. And it was all because we respected her. And the first time I did a play, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I was supposed to be a dwarf. The prince backed out. She made me do the prince. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to have to kiss a girl at 10 years old. She said, you basically shut up, you're doing it. And when I walked out on those boards and kissed her and the crowd applauded, I was hooked, man. It was something, I can't explain it, something very familiar about walking on a stage. All the nerves went away as soon as I stepped out. And that's still pretty much what happens to me to this day. When I do theater, so as soon as I have nerves, and then as soon as I walk out, it just kind of I goes away. It's like this familiar place to me, and I knew right then that's what I wanted to do, and I bugged my parents incessantly to get me in a class and make it happen.
So you still do theater?
I haven't done any in a while, but I for a long time I really tried to make sure I did a show a year. And I was part of a really good ensemble company in Los Angeles for a number of years called Friends and Artists Theater Ensemble, run by a guy named Sal Romeo. He still has a space. He still has a theater, but they don't put up as much shows. But I studied with him for a number of years as well. And he's one of the best kept secrets in Hollywood, in my opinion. But it's good. The difference is in theater, you have more time to prepare, and then you ongoingly can keep working on it while you're doing it. So it's more of a you have more of a process, right? More of a you're adding layers. If you get a television show, you have less than 24 hours to prepare that audition. You get it, you have less than a week to show up and do it. You don't have a lot of time to experiment. You're pretty much going with your big guns. You know, they've hired you because they know you can deliver, and that's what you're expected to do. You're lucky in a scene in television as a guest star, that's what I've done a lot of. You get 3 takes if you're lucky. You know, if you don't fall down and don't fumble your lines, they're moving on because they're trying to shoot 45 minutes of content in a week. It's not easy. So I learned how to be, you know, prepared and ready on my first and my second take, because that's usually all you're going to get. But it's a different process for sure in that regard.
Yeah. And obviously
that's why it's great to get back to theater, because it's great to get back to process, because in terms of Hollywood in Los Angeles, it's all about results. You know, you're constantly auditioning, trying to get a result. And so you start to, sometimes you can burn out because you're not feeding the soul. So I've always found ways as an actor to feed the soul, whether it be doing music or taking a road trip or doing theater. Don't expect Hollywood to fulfill your artistic needs. You know, they're hiring you to do a job, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I assume you have the immediate response from the crowd when you're doing theater, but how about the idea that, you know, once it's done, you know, everyone there can remember it, but no one else can ever see it again. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that's the interesting and immediate part of theater, right? You get an immediate response, and where that's the most fun is in comedy. You're doing a comedy, and there's nothing more fun than when, you know, you can sense a crowd, right? Like how this particular crowd's in. Saturday nights are usually the best. People have gone out to eat, they've drank a little bit, they're you know, they don't have to work tomorrow, they're feeling really good. But when you know the show's rolling, and you get to this line that you know is going to get a huge laugh, and they might even be anticipating the joke already, and you just wait because they're right there with you and you know it, and you sort of wait for that last laughter to roll down from the next, and then you hit that punchline and then they just roar right back up. You know, when you have that kind of facility of control, they're with you completely. That is super fun.
Would that be your preferred genre in film too, is comedy?
No, definitely not. But you know, you didn't ask this question, but if you said, do I prefer theater or film?
Yeah.
Or film is what I prefer. And the reason I prefer it over television as well is you have a little more time to prepare usually. Everyone's very excited. It's a project we're all in together. Whereas in TV, they've been working on the show for months. They've been working 12-hour days. They're tired. They just want to find somebody who can do the job, you know? In film, everyone's kind of in the same boat of this creation. You all roll into some town somewhere like the circus, and you're all in it together. What I love about it is I prepared my character. Somebody else has prepared their character. The director has an idea of what he wants or she wants to see the film overall, but we haven't really rehearsed, and I really love that. I love the not rehearsing. I'm prepared, I'm ready, and then we do like a little rehearsal where we got to go so camera knows, but I don't reveal my hand. Like when we do rehearsals, I've had many times them go, "That's not how you're going to do it, right?" And I'm like, "No." I said, "I don't want to know exactly what I'm going to do, and I don't want whoever I'm working with to know exactly what I'm going to do. So no, I'm not giving it away. Let's roll. You don't like what I'm doing, we can adjust." But that moment that crew has spent hours lighting, getting it prepared for this moment, and then this moment happens, this unpredictable moment happens, and then it's caught on celluloid for our now video forever. So it's like a moment, but it's a moment that goes on forever, I guess is the best way I can describe it. And that's what's really fun to me. And I love not knowing what the other person's going to do or them knowing what I'm going to do. You know, I love the element of the surprise of it.
The reason for that, does that affect then how they react to you or vice versa?
Yeah, you can't, if and it depends on the actor too, but generally speaking, if some actor is the kind of person who wants to stay in control and predict everything, that to me is sort of boring. I don't want them to know what I'm going to do because I have very little element of surprise to get any kind of real reaction out of them. You know, I want to catch them off guard a little bit, and I want them to catch me off guard a little bit. I want to be surprised by what you're bringing to the game. I see it like a good game of ping pong or tennis. You know, I smack the ball over there, and you got to go run and go get it and smack the ball back. That's when it's at its best. You know.
Interesting. Trista, you have another question. By the way, she don't like to say, but Trista's an actor, and she said similar things about that it's a reaction, not.
Yeah, acting is reacting. Acting is listening. I mean, that's something I was certainly taught. Yeah, if you're not reacting, you're definitely not engaged. It's a bit of a juggling balls. You have your lines, you have your marks you have to hit. You have this character you've created. You have your lines, your cues you have to give. But really, yeah, reacting is, and I've done a lot of ensemble work where I'm doing a lot of listening, and I can't tell you how many times editors have come up to me and said, thank God for you, man, because every time I needed to cut away because something wasn't working, I knew I could cut away to you because you were listening. And it's true, I do. I listen. I'm not trying to steal a scene from anybody. I'm just doing my part, but I'm actively, listening.
Interesting. Trista, did you have a question?
Speaking of film, you have several films coming up, including Queen Bees. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, let's go over the list. All of a sudden, all these projects have come out all at once, so to speak, or kind of coming all at once. I think because COVID sort of held things up. So the first one is Queen Bees, and do you need to know about the story of the movie? I can give you the little. Sure. So Ellen Bernstein goes to a retirement home for what is to be a short period of time while her house gets redecorated. It burns to the ground, and she realizes she has to live here, and realizes that the retirement home is like high school all over again, except the mean girls are old. And then she finds love with James Caan down the road. My character, I just have a cameo in it. Surprisingly made the trailer, which was awesome.
Yeah, I saw you get kicked in the nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And but what I got the opportunity to do was work with Ellen Bernstein, Ann-Margaret, Jane Curtin, and Loretta Devine, and that to me was a joy to watch those iconic ladies work. And the first half of the scene was my characters watching them in this diner looking for an opportunity to steal a purse. So I really got to just spend the first half of the day watching these iconic actresses who, if you understand, I watch actors from I know their methods, right? Like Eileen Bernstein is known, as a actor studio New York actress, to sort of watch her process, and then to watch something like a Jane Curtin with an original Saturday Night Live, or with the kind of comedy timing chops you can't teach, to watch them all be different styles but all interacting together was awesome. And then, by the time it got to my turn, I was ready to have fun with them, which we did. It was a really fun experience.
Yeah, it looks very fun from the trailer. And
It really made the director, the writer producer, he wrote it because that's what happened with his grandmother when she went to a home, and he was just shocked to find out it was like there was the cools and the nerds and the cliques, and he just wasn't expecting any of that,
Yeah,
so it was a frightening idea. The idea of having to, I didn't like high school all that much. I don't want to go back in my old age.
Yeah. I used to work at one, and then after surgery a few years ago, I had to go to one for rehab. So everyone else was in their 90s, and I was, in my early 40s. It was a weird experience.
Would you agree with that assessment that it's kind of like high school?
Yeah, it is. It's really weird, even because I was given a roommate, and he was 94, I think. And it was weird. He had a little battle with another guy there. He'd get up every morning at 4:30 and shave with electric shaver.
Oh my God.
And then in the middle of the home, he would meet this other guy, and they're both in wheelchairs, and they would compare who had the closer shave, and they would get mad at each other. And it was I was like, I don't know, this is very strange. He's a nice guy. He's like, hey, let's go down for ice cream, which meant just to go down to the communal kitchen and get these little Dixie cups of ice cream out of there. But it was it's fun looking back now. I can't say it was very fun at the time. But,
No. All right. So let's see. Film number 2, a movie called Await the Dawn, just came out on Amazon Prime. Much to the surprise of all of us, including the director. It had been out in foreign, but we hadn't heard anything, and all of a sudden it's out. Horror film. It's got Dee Wallace got a big role in it. Vernon Wells does something in it. I do something in it. It's a fun ride. So you can check that out on Amazon Prime. This week, a movie called River came out that's described as a psychological sci-fi thriller. Very independent little film. Remarkable that it got put out in less than a year for an independent film. That's unheard of. It's only the cast is only 5 people. The plot is that this character River comes back to her small town after her mother mysteriously passes away, and then she starts having time lapses, where she doesn't remember where she was, and she thinks it's because of depression, and she thinks she's perhaps going insane, but it's got a sci-fi element that explains that at some point. I play a character named Dr. Michael Glenn, and he fulfills three things in this movie. Like I said, it's a small cast. He's a very close friend of the family, almost a surrogate father. B, he owns the antique store she works at. And then C, he's also the town psychiatrist. So he starts doing therapy with her after her time lapse. He serves many functions. I had a nice long COVID beard for that. And it was a nice departure role for me, very earthy, very compassionate character. And I think, as we were talking about aging, I think I'm starting to age into those types of roles where in the past that probably wouldn't be what I would have gotten. So that's three. The last one is Charming the Hearts of Men. That comes out August 13th. That was a movie I did in Atlanta area a couple of years ago. I think, again, COVID just held everything up. That movie's set in the 50s, and it's about loosely based on the true story of this woman. She was a debutante. Father passes away. She has a big house but has no money. Takes a job at this diner. I play the owner of the diner. See, owner of the diner, Mr. Spratt's Diner. And civil unrest is happening in this small town, and she allows a sit-in in this diner because she's the hostess that causes a huge ruckus in the town that actually in real life made the newspapers. She becomes aware of civil rights, and because she's a debutante, she's connected to the governor, and she literally is the person who got the governor to put the word women's rights in the civil rights bill. And that's what it's about. And I love doing movies and period pieces, 50s. I have a nice little flat top for that. And I'm glad it's seen the light of day. I think it's a story worth telling.
Yeah, very cool. When you mentioned Vernon Wells and Dee Wallace, and I assume you get to know a lot of these people from the conventions.
You are right.
You get to do movies with them. I assume, I don't know, what's that experience like? Is that fun? Or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've worked with Dee, technically I've worked with Dee 3 times. I think the first time we were in a movie together was Secret Admirer, but I didn't have any scenes with her. But we've worked together since. Dee's a force of nature. She takes her work very seriously. She's pretty method in my opinion. I like that. So, and Vernon, my God, Vernon's done so much work. And, obviously played one of the greatest iconic heavies of all time. And, great veteran actor. So, no, I've been in technically 2 or 3 films with him as well. But we did what was that movie called? A movie called The Silent Natural about the first deaf baseball player. He was in that. We did this one together, and I've never acted with him in a scene yet, though. And then another one called, I think it's called American Bigfoot. I do a fun cameo in because they actually took some of my music as well, so I agreed to do a cameo for him. And he has a pretty significant part in that. So we've been in 3 movies, but we've yet to, and that'll be fun because he's going to bring it. So, and I'm going to bring it. So
yeah. I want to mention Candy Corn because that came out a couple years ago, and I actually had that in my top list of movies that year because I think it's I don't want to say underrated, but I do think it should get more attention because I thought it was really well made. It's got like a 70s kind of vibe to it.
Absolutely, 70s homage to the 80s for sure. The thing about an independent film is it really comes down to the level of distribution you get, and then what that means is when a company picks it up, what do they do to get it out there? And, Epic picked it up, and I'm thankful they picked it up, but I don't know that they did as much as I feel they could have in terms of, what they call P&A, prints and advertising. They didn't put any real skin in the game, in my opinion, to get the word out, right? And that's what it takes. And it takes a lot of money to get the word out, but I didn't feel like they put a push on it at all. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I came on that movie originally as an actor, ended up being we ended up taking over 2 years to put that thing together. I ended up coming in as a producer at some point because I saw the potential of the movie and helped raise some funding that helped get more shooting done that then helped get the rest of the money. And then when we shot in LA, that's when I really put my hands on it as a producer and said, now you're in my town. I'm going to show you how we run things out here. And, could get good deals on trailers and things like that, with the budget we had. And, it was. I think it came out good, and I enjoy Poncho. Poncho is the one who got me the job.
Poncho. I've had him on the show many times.
Yeah, Poncho played Dr. Death. I think it's a great vehicle for him. I think they could go on and make 10 more. So we'll see what happens. I know that the director didn't want to do another one as his second film. He wants to do something else first and then come back to it. Which might be a long-term smart move. But I would love to see Poncho do that role again. I thought he was great. And, it was a good role for me, again, as as I'm getting older, got to play the sheriff of the small town. And like I said, those are the types of roles that are available now.
Yeah, I had one when it came out. Josh Hasty, the director, was on the show, and he mentioned you and said the original producers were not really supportive, and then he really mentioned that you were a big help on the film.
Yeah, I actually vouched for, I don't want to give a name, but I vouched for a producer that I'd worked with previously in some other horror films who heard about it. And he kind of went MIA on us on the first round of shooting, and it caused a big rift with he and I, actually, because it was affecting the shoot. We were in Ohio. We had to shoot twice in Ohio in the fall. That's one of the reasons it took so long. First time we shot, and then we missed the fall. We had to come back, and it was like deja vu a year later, coming back to the same place, shooting again. But so when he fell out, I felt, being that I had recommended him, I felt a little obligated to keep the movie alive. And luckily I was able to, like I said, raise something just to help keep it going, to give us enough footage to show other investors, like, hey, this has a great look to it, and there's some good performances in it, and this is a movie worth making. It's a cool project,
Yeah, I hope people check it out, because I thought it was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another movie of yours that is actually, it might be my favorite movie of yours, is The Burbs. And I love the amazing cast in the movie. Obviously, yes. Tom Hanks, but there's everyone in the movie's great. And what was it like to work with some of the veteran actors in that? Because, you were a younger guy at the time. Yes.
Well, the biggest challenge was this character who was supposed to be a stranger from a strange land. Everywhere I looked, I saw people that were part of my childhood. You know what I'm saying? It's like people that I admired, and certainly, my favorite of all of them was Bruce Dern. I just, kind of could see myself in his, I could see a career like his to some degree or whatever. He was really, really super kind to me and took me under his wing and really acknowledged the kind of work I was doing and gave me great advice. And I was very, very grateful. And last year, or the end of 2019, I did a movie called Hellblazers that is yet to come out, but it's got a really good horror cast to it as well. But it was so great to get to see Bruce again and thank him all those years later and tell him how much I had appreciated him taking me under his wing at that time. Oh, that's very cool. And you mentioned like seeing yourself on the 40-foot screen. Yeah. It's not the most flattering look in the Burbs. So no. I know it's kind of silly questions, acting and everything, but was there any apprehension to No, there wasn't, because I just dive all the way in. I mean, I have an odd willingness. I say odd because it sort of surprises me too. But I'm at my best when I'm willing to look bad, and that means physically or otherwise. And I often go that way with stuff. I often lean into it, right? And I don't know why exactly. I know it's not necessarily going to flatter me, but it just, a lot of times that's where the character needs to go, in my opinion. And I have to be willing to go where I'm uncomfortable going. But I give all the credit to that look to Joe Dante. All I did was take a general meeting with him on that. I was working a lot already. We had a little conversation of what I saw him like, and I got the job. And then from that moment on, he was sending me to things to do, like, go get these teeth made. They're going to be horrible. I want to see him on. Come back to me. Then he'd laugh. Go get your haircut. And he'd tell him, mess his haircut. But I don't want it to be even. Then I'd have to show him the haircut. And he'd laugh. And then, then he picked the swath for the lederhosen. I had to come show him the outfit. This is a big budget production where you had time to put stuff together. And I put that on, and then he just started laughing. And he's like, "You're never gonna work again." Not that I thought that would be the case, but I got where he was coming from. And then the makeup artist, who goes all the way back to apprenticing on Eddie Munster, just did a fabulous. I learned more from him about makeup than anybody, because what he did was the exact opposite of making you look good. So I have a little bit beady eyes, right? So if I lighten up in here, it brings my eyes out, right? So he would do the opposite, right? So it'd make you even look worse. So the way he did shading contouring, I learned what contouring was by him using them all to the disadvantage as opposed to the advantage. And then the last thing he did that was really interesting that nobody else has ever done, and I've used it for auditions and things, is he took pastels. He took a green pastel, used some sandpaper, and then brush it on to put like green veins underneath the makeup. And it gave this like translucent little, very subtle, cool thing that but that's because he was old school, man. He went all the way back to black and white. And he would not let them get me out of that trailer. They'd try to get me, and he would just like tell them, go away, he's not ready yet. He just really took care of me to have me look my worst.
Right. And some pretty sweet facial hair in the movie as well.
Yeah, well, he used what they call spirit gum, right? The stuff for sticking it, and he would like comb it with a comb so it would just stand straight out.
I love it. Trista, you have another question?
I imagine there are some similarities between the independent film business and the independent music business. Can you extrapolate on that a bit?
I can a little. I'm not as savvy about the music businesses, which is probably why I don't have a record deal. But if you're going to make a record on your own, like somebody goes to make a movie on their own, then which is hard enough to do, and the financial cost, it's a little less to make a record perhaps. But then you have that daunting task of getting it out. And so that there's two ways to go with that. You put it out independently, or you get a distributor. And clearly the better distributor you can get, the better chance you have. It really is the make or break of a project. And in my case of music, I'm just doing self-distribution right now. But as a producer in movies, I've had highs and I've had lows. Like I said, Children of the Corn came out on Epic. I think they did all right. I had a movie called Benny Bliss and the Disciples of Greatness that I think is a great little film. I wrote 4 songs in. I sing in it. I play music. We did literally a live concert at the end, like a 30-minute set. Most out of net I've ever been as an actor. That distribution didn't do a great job getting the word out on that. It's just kind of under the radar. But I had a movie called Dorm Days I helped produce that MGM picked up just straight to video, but you're still talking a top 5 distributor, right? And that thing actually, made money, and the producers and director went on to make 3 more because they could easily raise money at that point because they could say to people, MGM's going to put this out. So it's hard enough to raise money. It's hard enough to make it. The toughest is getting good distribution.
So you get the movies coming out that you mentioned. You have the music. Where can people go to see what you're up to and find your music?
Yeah, best places. If you're going to find music, you can find it on Spotify, Amazon, Deezer. You can find music videos up on YouTube. As far as me, Facebook, it's just my name. Same thing with my Instagram. I always tell people I know there's probably more than one Courtney Gains up on Facebook. You'll be able to tell which one it is because I have all the current stuff they wouldn't have. So you'll know it's me.
All right, very good. Well, this was great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
very good. Nice meeting you guys.
Yeah.
You too.
Take care.